welcome to the Recruiter Syndicate Podcast, where we spotlight leaders who are reshaping the hiring landscape through bold moves, real pivots, and next level thinking. Today's guest is someone who embodies all of that. Steve Perry, CEO of the Wellness Recruiting Solutions. After building a widely successful career in the Fortune 100 leadership, Steven made a leap to launch a purpose-driven recruiting company that blends elite hiring strategies and timeless core values. He's also the author of the Capacity Model, a framework that helps leaders build aligned, high-performance teams from the inside out. Today, we're unpacking his journey, his leadership philosophy, and how he's using recruiting as a tool for both business growth and personal impact. So, Steve, before we dive in, please let us know your backstory. Obviously, can you tell us a little bit about what your firm does, who you serve, and what your core offer looks like right now?
Yeah. Well, hey, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. Let me work backwards. So our firm, we work with independent wealth management firms from 5 to 100 employees, 2 million to 100 million in revenue, and we provide a not cheap, we'll just say that, white glove talent acquisition, end-to-end process and service for them. Typically, we help them hire advisors and then any of the support staff that they need to grow their firm. Usually, we're working with the founder and CEO who's stepping out from working in the business and working on the business, and we're helping them with their growth goals. So that's all we do all day long. I got a team of almost 30 people, work all over the U.S., and we've helped almost 100 firms connect with, interview over 1,000 advisors over the last year and a half.
Awesome. Well, let's rewind for a second. Let's see. What's the origin story behind the wellness recruiting solutions and you, of course?
Yeah.
And obviously, what made you step into the world of recruiting in the first place?
Yeah, so I spent 17 years, as you mentioned, at a Fortune 100 financial services company. I was a financial advisor myself for the first 5 years of my career. Got into it because I was always been entrepreneurial, and then I grew up in Alaska, and after many years there, I wanted out of Alaska, but I did not want to have to build a new practice somewhere else, and so I went, the employee, the management corporate track, and I spent 12 years in progressively higher levels of executive leadership. I grew a team from scratch to about 40 advisors, then was given my first office, grew that from 40 to 100 advisors, and then my last office, again, as a managing partner running a firm of about 120 advisors and support staff. And so after 17 years, Andrew, I kind of looked up and I was like, man, they pay me $900,000 a year to run their company, not my company. And I got into this to have my company. And, quite frankly, somewhere along the way, I had done some pretty deep work on, what is my vision for my life, what I feel like God's called me to do. And I kind of created this purpose statement. And that is that I'm a bold, encouraging, and generous follower of Jesus who will help fund billions to grow God's kingdom by leading others to live radically generous lives. And I had tried to do that to the best of my ability in that company, and was just, hitting my head on the corporate parameters, the corporate rails that just exist, and they're great, but I just knew that if I was going to fully step into that mission for my life, I was going to have to step out from someone else's platform. And so through a lot of prayer, my wife and I decided to leave and start The Well.
Love it. I honestly, I don't think a lot of people, when I say a lot of people, I'm talking about 99% of people, can actually see themselves doing that. You walked away from a $900,000 leadership role just to build a mission, something mission driven. What was it that pushed you over the edge, right? And how did faith really shape your decision?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm kind of a guy, I'm a big vision guy. So, whatever everyone else is talking about, I'll add a zero. And then I'm also like bottom line driven. And so for me, I look at my life, and the hope that I have is that, when I die, I get to spend eternity in heaven with Jesus. And, whether that's someone's faith or not, they believe in something. And if I believe in that and I'm going to operate in that, then I'm going to do what, the instructional book says to do. And the Bible says to go into all the world and tell everyone about Jesus. And there's, we live in a world today where there's a lot of roles in that, right? There's actual doing that. And then there's other things that you can basically fund that. And so I felt like my calling was to fund that. And, the biggest the biggest check that I had ever been able to write to helping do that, working under someone else's brand was, a couple few $100,000. And that wasn't, that's not going to do it. That's not going to do it. And so I needed something that would allow me to do more. And I knew God would bless it. And so, yeah, that was really the mission. Like, if I truly believe what I believe, and I truly believe that I've been gifted to do this, and I truly believe that my purpose on this earth is this, then I have to do something about it. And so that's what we did.
Yeah, no, especially when it comes to like your core beliefs, there's no way. It's just, you have to be unshakable with some of the things that you believe in. Speaking on that, like, what's something you used to believe when you like first started out, but now, like, you see you've been doing this for just shy of 24 months, like, but now you see totally different.
Yeah, I'll say one thing we started out, so the original vision I had for the company was to grow it and scale it and sell it for $100 million over a 5-year period of time. And a couple things happened. Number one, with that in mind, I'm like, all right, well, so what are all the components of a company that gets a high multiple on its exit, right? Well, recurring revenue is a huge piece of that. So I set out to build a company that had a recurring revenue model. And the problem we set out to solve was helping the leaders of financial services firms get the talent that they need to grow. And, we picked one market, we worked in that and built this kind of lead gen recruiting model for them. I blew our team up to like 50 people. We had 20 some people at a call center in the Philippines. We were cranking, and we never made money. It was like every month after month. And the story I kept telling myself was like, that's all right. We're just stacking recurring revenue, and that takes time. And, we'll be happy when we wake up at the beginning of every month and we know we've got X amount of money coming in. But it was just, we were always behind. And you could never have a big win. Like, my average client was like $2,800 a month. I think our biggest client ever was like $4K a month. But even that, like, that's not going to solve your problems when you're running 50 or 100 grand in payroll and you're in the red. And so that was something that we had to abandon. Like, we accidentally had someone say, hey, can you help us hire this? And, it wasn't a recurring thing. It was a one-time. And I Googled, like, how much do I charge them? And I told them, and they're like, perfect. And I made 1 year's worth of revenue in 1 month. And I'm like, but it's not recurring. But then I'm like, well, wait a second. This is a growing firm, and they got 80 people, 90 people with them. They're going to have turnover. Like it is recurring. Like, they're going to hire me to do this again. And again, they've hired us over and over and over again. And every time we do that, we make a year's worth of revenue in a month. And so finally I had to abandon that. And now we're going to, our average ticket is 28K, and our average client buys 1.8 recruiting services from us, first time out the gate. So, we went from a $2,900 a month ticket with, average of 5 or 6 months retention to 45K. And we can, we've got people that are like, they're going to buy $300,000 worth of recruiting services from us this year. That's a lot of $3,000 a month.
Yeah, I was about to say, the thing I'm thinking about is like you've helped over like 100 firms introduce over.
Not yet, almost 100 firms. Almost 100 firms, over 1,000 advisor candidates.
Over 1,000 advisor candidates. What's working really well, like in your business right now, that you wish you doubled down on sooner?
Yeah. So. Technology is, data specifically is, the most important thing that allows us to do what we do at a really elite pace. But I've bought so much technology that has been a waste, and I have bought some technology that has been phenomenal. And I remember like the biggest license I bought, was like $20,000. And like, it took that guy 7 months to sell me it, because I'm like, I don't have the money to do this, and that's a big chunk. And we use that all the time now. Like we couldn't run our business without it. And we've used that to stack now with, some 6-figure software. And between that, all the research that we've done and putting them all together and trying all the other stuff, we've got $400,000 or $500,000 into a data and tech package that makes us, I think, the only firm that can do specifically what we're doing in the amount of time that we can do it.
No, I definitely want to get to the tech stuff later. But one thing you mentioned on our previous call, and I think you kind of hinted on it earlier just in this conversation, but you mentioned letting go of your sales team recently.
Yeah.
Now, what did that teach you, like about like internal growth versus like what the business actually needs?
Yeah. So, another piece, right? You got to sell your company for double-digit multiples, right? Like you got to have a scalable sales process. And so, all along the way, I'm just dumping every dollar we get back in and every dollar in my wife's savings account into hiring more staff to try to, because it's a big payoff, right? Salespeople are a big payoff. If they return, if they hit, you're getting 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to 1 on that. And so, that's what I did for years, right? Like I led financial advisory firms and recruited hundreds of people into that. Well, what is that? They're salespeople for the product. And so I thought I could do it. I tried it multiple different ways. I tried it internationally. I tried it domestically. I tried hiring a CRO and had like expensive tech, everything. And the one thing that was faithful through the whole thing, I'll tell you a story. So last November, the week of Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving's on Thursday. We were closed down because you're not recruiting anybody during that time. So I'm going through and doing the CEO stuff, and I'm like, my gosh, we have, I don't know, $4,000 in the bank, and I got payroll on Friday, which is 12 grand or whatever it was at the time. I'm like, and everyone's closed. Like, we don't have any money to pay payroll. And I'm just praying, and I'm like, Lord, like, what are you gonna do? Like, what do we do? And he's like, don't worry. He's like, I've come you this far. I didn't bring you this far to have the company fail, to have you not pay the people who are working for you. And he brought me to a verse in Deuteronomy, and it was a promise to the Israelites. It said, not only will you not borrow any money from your neighbors, but you'll lend to many nations. And he brought me to that verse, and I was just kind of a prophetic word for us. So I was like, I'm not ever gonna have to borrow money for this, and God's gonna always provide. And so I share that story to fast forward now 7 months, 8 months later. The one thing that was constant through the whole time is that month over month over month, my network, my sales, my referrals, like all of that would grow and grow and grow, from 10, 15, 20,000 a month to 50,000 to 100,000 to 200,000 to 400,000. I had a $250,000 week a couple weeks ago. I'm like, now that's sold, right? We still have to fulfill them. We got to find the people and do that. But they're like, yeah, I'll pay you that much money if you can get me this, and we will. But I just looked at that and I'm like, my goodness, like I think I looked, it was like 4 million in conversations and between closed and will close in the last 5 months. None of that was my sales team. Not a single one of it. As many as 6 people working full-time or almost full-time at it, and me doing 10 hours a week. And none of that has anything to do with me. That's God saying, I got you. Like I will put the connections and the relationships in place. You don't need this sales team. And then the further thing I took from that is like, if God wants me to sell this company for, that was the other thing I learned, right? It's not a $100 million opportunity. It's $1 billion opportunity. He's like, if I want you to sell this company for $1 billion, do you think I can figure out what the investment bankers, what they want to see on, how to get you the multiple that I want you to have, whether you have a sales team or not, or what you're doing? Like, just take what I'm giving you right now. So, and by the way, like, you don't need to spend $20-some thousand a month on this sales team.
But what does a great day, as a CEO look like for you? And like, how often do you get those?
As someone who as a managing partner had like the most prescribed, beautiful, color-coded, back-to-back 30-minute meeting calendars, 40, 50, 60 meetings a week. Prior to this, at my old company, it's looked nothing like that. I've tried it 100 times. And I'm like in the middle of it right now. It's like every CEO, and everyone tells a story. Like there's something like this. So right now I am in a 900 square foot brick, concrete, cinder block house in a retirement community in Sun City, Arizona. It's hot in here. I'm on a glass patio table with my laptop because my wife's aunt her health is not going well. And so she doesn't have anybody. So 3 weeks ago, my wife flew down here to take care of her, and we're doctor's appointments and financial advisors and estate planning, and we put her in a home then I had to bring the kids after school. And so what my calendar looked like 3 weeks ago has totally changed because, I'm now 2 hours behind my team on the West Coast, and it's just, we're just surviving. And so, what does a good day look like, right? I get a new client that needs 2, 3, 4 people hired. And I have like one amazing podcast like this where I get to meet incredible people who have invested a lot of time, money, and energy, and it will take them a long time to see the payoff from it, but I get to be a recipient and blessed by that. Like, I love doing that. And then I get to meet with all kinds of cool business owners guys that, grew up very lower middle class, like nothing, and they've built this company that's making 5, 10, 20, $50 million a year and providing multiple six-figure jobs to their employees and helping hundreds or thousands of clients feel much more confident about their financial plan. Like, that's a cool day.
Yeah, I will say that, like, all the investment that you put into everything, like, especially the network, one of the biggest things you mentioned earlier was like the network of people you really surround yourself with. It's all about that giving value, and it comes back tenfold whenever, like you said, just give, just lend. Mm-hmm. It'll come back. Mm-hmm. When you think about like growing your firm, like over the next 6 to 12 months, like what's one thing that you feel like it might slow you down?
Yeah. So I think a couple things. We are trying to be, very tech forward. And I learned something recently. We're not going to be a SaaS company. We can't be a recruiting company because I'm not going to sell this for 6 to 8x. So we have to be we got to go 20x somehow. And I learned about a new category called HR tech, and those kinds of companies, they're 25, 30 on earnings. And so, that was just kind of the icing on the cake of like, we have to really triple down on technology. And we talked about that already, but the enterprise value, not only do we get efficiencies where, once our thing starts singing, we have ridiculous margins anyways, but then that's going to help. But then also the classification that we get from that has a ridiculous enterprise value. So that's something we're always spending time on, thinking we're talking to this genius guy right now to kind of take over that, but we don't have any money. So we're like, how much time do I or my COO do it? And then, if we go down the wrong path for 3 months, that's a slowdown and we got distracted. So I think this overarching tech infrastructure that we're going to create for our company certainly has a risk element to it that could slow us down.
One thing that we did talk about before is you're always finding whether it's the talent, but some clients are dragging their feet on hiring. What's been the most frustrating part of that client side of friction?
Yeah. So I had the most incredible meeting yesterday with our biggest client, and it was 4 months overdue. And these guys are going from 3 employees in 2019. They're 47 today, and they'll go to 100 over the next couple of years. They're just exploding. And this, like many of our clients, they're just further along. The CEO is stepping out of practicing and stepping into a CEO role. But it's his firm, it's his right to do. And one of the things he has to do is, in his mind, he has to interview everybody. But he's on a speaking tour. So he's on a stage a week a month. He's on a mastermind a week a month. And, 6 weeks can disappear pretty quickly before we can get an interview in front of him. And they won't hire someone until then. And so we had to have a real conversation. And I just shared, look, I didn't even know the last 3 people we hired at our firm. I didn't meet them until their first day. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but at some point it's going to get that way. And your goals, where you want to be, you got to take this step out of the process. You got to trust your team, and I promise they'll perform better. So they said they would strongly consider get back to us on that, but that'd be a big win. And then as we're learning, these are all things that we need to be upfront with future clients. Like, hey, these are our terms of our engagement.
Where do you feel like whether it's time or money, that you're investing? Where do you feel like you're investing your time or money, but not getting the results that you expected?
Well, money. We talked about the sales team. And another thing that we've done is we've invested. So I started the company with all overseas talent, and that at its peak we probably had 40 people, 35, 40 people, and it's just dwindled and dwindled and dwindled. And what it's dwindled to is really the best of the best that we've found, that we have, and I'm just trying to figure out like how do we maximize using them. But right now, I don't know that I'm getting a huge ROI, no matter how incredible they are, just because of the kind of the elite level of recruiting that we've kind of put ourselves niched into that just takes understanding the specific market in America. Time-wise, I will tell you, I'm not perfect, but like, I think I'm really, really good at allocating my time to where it needs to be. So there's not a lot of wasted time. There's some things I want to do, I like to do. I like to sit and dream with Grok and ChatGPT, and I spend way too much time doing that. So, some might see that as a waste, but no one else is doing that for our company. So I don't know. I don't know that one thing I would say, just kind of a general leadership principle that I believe more than ever is as soon as you have the inkling to fire someone, that's when you're supposed to fire them. Like it's never turned around. It's only delayed what needed to be done. So there's a lot of wasted money there and a lot of wasted time. And not because they're a bad person, but they're not in the spot where they can thrive, and it's up to you to release them to go thrive.
Hire fast, but fire faster.
Yes. A lot of people say hire slowly, fire quickly, but I'm with you. I'm a hire quickly, fire quickly. Now, I like that's my philosophy. Do I live it? I'm so bad at conflict. I hate it.
If you could solve like one challenge in the business right now, what would make the biggest impact?
Yeah, if we could go from, if we could get our time to fill like to 3 weeks, even 4 weeks would be ridiculous, right? We're getting them the short list of something we do is unique it seems like a no-brainer. Every client says they've never seen it before. We do every screening interview recorded on Zoom, and we send that to the client so they get to preview it, which they love because, so many of us have been on an interview and like in the first 30 seconds, you're like, if I could have just seen this person and like I would have known not to waste this hour with them. So all I'd say, we're getting them their short list of those candidates within 7 to 14 days, and then it's just extending 30, 40 days after that, which is just crushing us right now.
Okay. Going back to you were talking about inside the company, but there's something that we talked about before. You have a bold vision that when it comes to like selling the company for building it, and really use that for like to fund global missions, right?
Yep.
What's the next like leap for you in order to be able to make that happen, or that you move towards that?
Yeah. So, something that we do right now that I think is our secret weapon and is the not so secret part of why we've been able to make it thus far is we have a dedicated prayer team. So about a year ago, I hired a chief prayer officer, and then he leads this team. We have 12 people that are Bible college students, or one of them's the actual chaplain of the Bible college. We pay their room, board, tuition, books. They have hospital visits. They got, we pay for things like that to take care of them. We basically taken over them, taking care of their finances. And they pray an hour a day for our company. And not just our company, but our clients. We give them the names of our clients' companies. They pray over our candidates. We meet with them once a month, and every month, several of them have prayed and fasted for 3 days for our company, or like one guy did 2 weeks. It was ridiculous. And so there are 600 of these students in the organization that we partner with that do it. And so the next step is I want to partner with all of them. I want to support every single one of them. And I can only just imagine 600 of these. These are some of the most powerful, influential, humble, amazing men and women. 600 of their prayers going up to God's ears for an hour every day. Watch out. And then the other thing is that they're there for a reason, and they graduate and then they go on to be missionaries. And again, they come from these families that have literally no money whatsoever. And so it's okay, well, here, where are you going to go? Give us the plan, give us the business plan, and we'll fund it. And so it's just a super, super cool pipeline of our ultimate mission of sharing the gospel to the ends of the earth. And just, basically from cradle to grave, we've got them from the beginning of their journey all the way through.
like I said, man, that's why I started off with like, this is bold, and you're definitely something that's doing something different, especially in this space. Let's see. When you think about your goals that you set for the next year, like what would make you feel like you actually hit them? Would it be like more revenue? Would it be more team freedom? Would it be deeper impact, or is it like something else altogether?
So interestingly, my partner and I were not like, he was, I don't know, family vacation or something, end of the year, two separate places. And we both had, during times of prayer separately, felt like God gave us a number for this year as far as a revenue number, which was 12 million. And I mean, we did 400 grand our first year. So, and spent a lot more than that. Yeah. So that number, so like I told him, I think God's saying this is the goal for the year. He's like, what's the number? I like 12 million. He's like, dude, and he tells me the story of God giving him the number 12, but he didn't know what it was for. He wasn't like praying for that, but like he had this number 12. And so like, all right, that's our number this year. And we're not even close. I mean, I don't know where we're at, 5, 6, 700 grand, but I don't want a business that I can explain how we did things. Like I can give pointers, I can share the direction that God gave me. God created natural order and leadership and everything. And so like I can share how those things played into place, but that would be a win. I'm believing in faith. I have no idea. The further we get in the year, I don't know how it's going to be, but that'd be a win.
I was just thinking about, I actually I'm in the middle of reading a book right now called The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. Mm-hmm. And literally today was day 5, and he talks about, have clarity in your intentions. Mm-hmm. And literally that's exactly what you're talking about. Like at least you gotta shoot for something, because you're going to be aimlessly shooting for nothing if you don't have like that number, right?
Yeah.
So you're looking for something to look forward to. So
yeah, I threatened once to write a book that was titled Never Hit Your Goals. And right, wrong, and different, like that's always been my philosophy. Like I have to get excited about it. And if like, it's got to be a number that's like I can get jazzed about, because as a leader, like you got to get behind it, right? But I've never hit a goal. Like very rarely do I hit a goal. And yet, by most of the world's standard, I've been pretty successful in, what the result was most of the time. And so I'm learning, like as a leader, like that's a little bit of a blind spot, a big blind spot as you're leading people, because they don't necessarily feel like, oh my gosh, we didn't hit the goal. Like, oh, the world's going to end. And so there's some balance, some principle in there. I need probably some coaching and maybe therapy on like figuring out how to quantify that better. I mean, Oliver, that's kind of my philosophy.
So let's shift back to the AI portion, because I remember we talked about this early on. For this question, it's going to be a 2-part question, right? When it comes to AI, like where do you see it being genuinely useful, and where do you think it's like being totally like overrated?
Well, I'm going to be one of those terrible guests that maybe doesn't answer your question. Here, specifically, here's what I see happening. It's always like AI is going to take over. Like we're going to have these agents that can do all the recruiting jobs and blah, 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 blah. And I'm sure you've seen this. I'm sure everyone sees it. But like a very simple example is the ability to now apply for 100 jobs with a custom written application, a custom written resume as an applicant, so that anyone who's posting jobs on LinkedIn and Indeed and any of these places is getting hundreds and hundreds of applicants. But the last time I posted a job for us, I got 800 applicants in 36 hours. And so it like as much as AI seems like, oh, it's going to remove someone's job, it creates a job. And that is, none of these companies have the resources. Now, obviously there's technology that can fix that too, but none of these companies have the resources to go through that. So I just see it as this like arms race of information. Same thing on social media, right? Like all of the AI, like I use ChatGPT every week to develop my LinkedIn content. And it's not, I don't say write it. If I said write my LinkedIn content, everyone would know and it would be terrible and I'd have no followers. But I sit there and I tell stories to it, every other day. And then at the end of the week, I say, what other stories do you want to hear? Like, ask me prompts. I tell the story, I talk to it, and then I've trained it on I upload my Shield data on how to were the results. And, so I spend a good 2 to 3 hours writing my content with AI. And so, but that's just it, just the more noise. It's the arms race of noise. But that didn't answer your question, though. It was around it, but it didn't really answer your question.
That sounds like that's the generally useful part. It sounds like that's the useful part. Where do you think it's being overhyped, rated, or whatever?
Well, I think anyone who says that, okay, here, I'll give you an example here. This is real time. I'll have to get creative to spin it to answer your question. I got pissed off at ChatGPT 2 weeks ago. And the reason I got pissed off was I realized how little it knew about me. Like I don't have the 200 a month plan, but I got the other plan. And I looked at like the saved message, like what it saves, like the memory on me. And it was only like 30 or 40 things. And I was under we got the team plan, our whole team's on it. Like I was under the impression that like it was this brain of all of us and it was gonna give us like real time, like all of this stuff. And it just all of a sudden dawned on me, it doesn't know anything, but it's so good at pretending that it makes it seem like it knows and then you're trusting it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is bad. And so I go to my partner, he's like, yeah, you don't want Sam Altman to know all that anyways. And I'm like, okay, well, what do we do? He's like, well, go to Grok. And so, yeah, so we're in this process of like actually creating this brain for our company where it does all feed together and then it can do all that. But I think the overhype is that it can really get to know who you are and help you like make all of these decisions when actually it's really just faking it based on a limited context that you give it.
Okay, let's move. Another two-part question.
Yeah.
You know, one thing you have mentioned that you blended AI-driven tools, right, with all the high-touch services you guys are doing. What's working well in that balance, right, and what are you still trying to figure out?
Yeah, we use Clay a lot. You know, a lot of that was our go-to-market, my whole RevOps strategy. It worked really well to write custom outbound messages at scale to prospective clients and candidates. I think that's really cool, and I think it's hard to do well, and so it will become table stakes probably over the next 12 to 24 months, but right now I think that's pretty novel and pretty cool and has worked well for us. My business partner wants to do AI screening, you know, and you got to differentiate, right? Like, you know, resume screening versus actual doing screening interviews, and I want to do it, like, so we can figure out, because I just think there's so many problems with it that it's like at the high level people we're interviewing, they're not going to want to engage with it. But I think it was Mark Cohn, he talked about how we as a society should want AI to do the screening interviews because it doesn't have, I mean, it has a bias, but it doesn't have anywhere near as bad of a bias as we as humans do when we're doing a screening interview of somebody, and it's actually going to provide a fairer merit-based shot to everybody. And so that little comment like is what's fueling me behind like, let's figure out how to adopt this. I know everyone's trying to do it, you know, it's just in our niche, and I think we have to.
Well, Stephen, well, I really do appreciate you being here and obviously sharing so openly with everything. The insights literally that you shared is exactly why we created the Recruiter Syndicate Podcast, really, to create like a space where founders can learn from each other and think more strategically about growth. Now, before we wrap up, where's the best place for like listeners to connect with you if they want to follow you or reach out to you? Right?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I'm on there all the time. Steve Perry, the Well Recruiting Solutions, not hard to find. I have a nice AI generated headshot that my wife says doesn't even look like me, but you know, it's close enough.
Yeah, I was looking at that too. All right, and to everyone else tuning in, man, if you got value from today's episode, and make sure to follow and subscribe, and so you don't miss out on what's coming up next. Okay, keep leading with intention, keep scaling with strategy, and building something that lasts. All right. So until next time, and then get out.